Hey everyone, OSG here with another Patreon request, and this one is from Robin Harboran, who runs the Clash YouTube channel 8-Bit Show and Tell. If you aren't familiar with his channel, you really need to get over there. I assume that the majority of you are here for Commodore, and he primarily does C64, but also other retro systems. His content however is a lot different to mine, and it's so interesting what he can do with these old systems. I mean, he loaded up a program from a vinyl record for God's sake. Anyway, he has asked me to do a video on his favourite genre, and that genre isn't covered very much. Car battlers or vehicular combat games are a game that most of us would probably categorise as racing, but they do have a difference in that most of these games the primary or secondary goal is to destroy the opposition. When he first mentioned it, it was going to be C64 only, but after a discussion I decided that a multi-platform selection would be much better, as it really maps out all the systems I loved this type of game on growing up, all the way up to the PSP. I've ordered these chronologically on the year of release. So without more delay, let's take a look at my favourite 20 car battler games of all time. First up we have Spy Hunter. Come on, we all knew this would be here. You can't have a video of this kind without the granddaddy of the genre. This game was released by Ballymidway in 1983, and although it looks pretty basic now, was really cutting edge at the time and super popular in the arcades and on home ports. Next up we have Violent Run, or as it's known in Japan, Gekisou. Now this one is a weird one for me, as I used to play this when I was young, but I could never ever find it. Reason for this is that the Violent Run ROM is so rare it has never been found and dumped. Anyway, I've had to make do with the Japanese version, but it's just as good as I remember. Of course there's a lot of nostalgia involved in this for me, but maybe people might not like this as much as I do if they didn't play it back in the day. Here we have the Speed Rumbler. Now this game was picked in the Tubers High Score Challenge a bit back, and I immediately was transported back to my youth. However, I think I knew it under its alternative name, Russian Crash. Anyway, it was released by Capcom in 1986, and I love the different aspects of the game, like being able to bail out of your car when it's gonna blow. Next up is BreakThru. Again, this is a game that holds so many good memories for me. This is me playing it at age 11 in Spain. I put so many pesetas in this machine that I went home whiter than when I went on holiday. It's a game that at first maybe will annoy some people, but after you get used to the controls it's class, especially the bridge level. This is Jackal on arcade, and it's another one that was in the Tubers High Score Challenge recently. During the challenge I really fell in love with this game. Some trivia about this game is that it was originally meant to have a rotation control like Akari Warriors and Midnight Resistance, but this was scrapped and we were left with the up-facing cannon, which I actually liked but would really have liked to play the other version too. One more thing, this could have been on the list as the NES game after playing it recently. It's so good. Action Fighter is the first of the console games on the list, and it's the Master System. This is a game that I spent absolutely ages on when I was a kid. The whole game is just brilliant. I love how they captured the feel of Spy Hunter, but also changing things enough to make it a great game in its own right. Obviously, it's a multi-genre game, with it being a shoot 'em up in parts too, but it still fits this category. Here we have Road Blasters. Now if Spy Hunter was a granddaddy of the genre, this was the one that took the genre to a whole new perspective with them behind car view. This is a game that doesn't really play great on MAME, but back when I was a kid, this was the dog's bollocks and had people queuing to play it. No need to tell everyone what this game is called, because Tato's Chase HQ is probably the most well-known game of the genre. It's a game that was like no other in the arcades. Still today people play this in the arcade clubs etc, and every time I've seen it has queues to get on. When you hear "Let's go Mr. Driver," you're instantly transported back to simpler times.
Let's get moving, man! Bear down! More! Push it more! Please!
Next up is Badlands. Now Badlands was just a reskin of the classic Atari game Super Sprint, but in this one we got the same great gameplay with guns. Me and my mates used to play this all the time, as it's definitely better in multiplayer, taking each other out. I fired it up in MAME yesterday and it still plays surprisingly good for a 33-year-old game. Here we have the only Amiga game on the list, and that's Supercars 2. This game was from Gremlin Games, who published a whole host of racing games for the Amiga, but in this one we got the full car battler treatment with front and back missiles and armour. Yeah, most people play this as a racing game, but deep down it's definitely a car battler. System 3's Turbocharge is up next. Come on, you must have known I'd sneak a Commodore 64 game in somewhere along the line, and this is the one that really deserves to be here. On a system that wasn't well known for car games, this one is super fast and fun, and the soundtrack is one of the best on the C64. So this is Road Rash 2 on the Mega Drive. I can always remember seeing this on the UK TV show Games Master and being blown away by how good it was. The game still plays great today, and out of the whole Road Rash series, for me this one is still the best. And unbeknown to me, the soundtrack is by the great Rob Hubbard. Next we have Super Mario Kart on the SNES. I've said this on multiple videos that racing games don't get much better than this. If you take away the fluffy nice characters and strip this game bare, it's truly a great car battler, with what was at the time by far the best racing action we had ever seen in our homes. Back to the arcades now with Lucky and Wilde. This is an all-out action car battling game that really reminds me of Chase HQ 2, but better. The whole game is so fast and manic, as you can see, driving through shopping malls, destroying everything in sight. It's also from the time that I was getting a little bit older and stopped going to the arcades as much, but every time I did, I would play this. Another SNES game here with Rock'n'Roll Racing. This game was on both my SNES and Mega Drive best racing videos, but for me the SNES one is superior. The isometric racing view is great with excellent controls, but we all know what makes this game great, and that's the kick-ass soundtrack, which again surprised me when I found out it was from Tim Follin and his brother Jeff.
Viper fades into left. Up! Viper face!
Okay, so here we are for me when everything in this genre changed. Destruction Derby was one of the first games I ever played on the PS1. I got it on a demo disc when I bought the system, using 2 weeks worth of my pay and not being able to afford a new game for another week later. This game was like nothing we had played before in our homes, and although it looks pretty dated, it was like real life back then. Even though it looks old, it's still as good to play today as it always was. Carmageddon is up next, and this was a game I never played on my own system as it was a PC, and who the hell would want one of those crappy things? It will never take off. Luckily one of my mates, Dave, was a proper geek and had one. We would go around his and play this. This game was actually banned in the UK for 10 months as it was deemed too violent, running people over, etc. Even now when I play it, I still feel that it's actually really bad for violence, but so satisfying, especially in the football stadium. Here we have Vigilante 8, and this game sums up the genre completely with pure out and out battle to the death carnage. It's another game that took a leap forward in the genre, especially with the weapon pickups and self-aiming cannons. It's a game that kids today would sit down and gladly play still. Moving into the realms of not retro now with Burnout 3 The Takedown on PS2. There's been a whole host of Burnout games, but for me this was the best of a lot of them. It was the first game that introduced after crash control, which was an awesome way of taking other races down after being wrecked. I also loved the crash mode, where you would smash into a junction and wreck as many vehicles as possible. And now, moving all the way up to 2010, we have Split Second on PSP. Whenever people talk about the PSP, I always ask them if they played this, and 90% of the time the answer is no, which I can't believe. As for me, it's by far the best arcade racing game on the system, but it's a racing game with a twist, in that you can trigger certain things on the track to take out your opponents. I played this for ages when getting the footage, and it's just as good now as it ever was. Okay, that's it for this video. I hope I've satisfied Robin with my selection, and thanks again for the suggestion. I think it's a genre that doesn't get the coverage it deserves in its own right. Let me know in the comments below what your favourite car battler games are on any platform, and be sure to get over to Robin's channel, the 8-Bit Show and Tell, to see some really interesting stuff that can be done with retro systems. Please remember to drop this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more great retro content. And if you want to support me on Patreon like this mob going up the screen right now, get over to my Patreon channel. Till next time, this is OSG, signing out.